The boy was raised among pigs on a farm, and years later, people were surprised by what became of him. Trapped in a grimy pig pen, doomed to perish amidst the filth, a boy named Landon endured the bleakest period of his life. Surrounded only by pigs, cows, and horses, he had no choice but to subsist on their scraps. Years later, the tale of his survival seemed almost unbelievable. Following the tragic demise of his parents, Landon plunged into an abyss of sorrow and tears, each day dragging him deeper into despair. As the youngest of three siblings, he alone seemed to truly grasp the full weight of their loss. His older siblings, Sienna and Damien, appeared to navigate through their grief with unsettling ease, their pain seemingly eclipsed by the allure of a substantial inheritance. When the moment came to unveil the will, impatience oozed from Damien's voice, his smile thinly veiling his eager anticipation. Sienna shared his vision with shining eyes. Imagine, Damien, no more dreary, backbreaking farm life. No more chilly mornings or slogging through the mud. Think of it, Sienna, Damien continued, his voice tinged with excitement. A house by the ocean, endless parties till dawn, jet-setting to far-off lands. No more toil, no future worries. As their dreams poured forth, Sienna nodded vigorously, the prospect of easy living painting a rosy picture before her. These conversations, however, sliced through Landon's heart like a knife. Mourning alone in his room, he felt an ever-growing chasm between him and his siblings. One afternoon in the old barn, overcome by emotion, Landon confronted them, tears streaming down his face. How can you be so heartless? Don't you feel anything about our parents' death? All you care about is the money, he accused, his voice breaking. Sienna turned to him, her expression a mix of disbelief and disdain. Oh, Landon, always so melodramatic. You must understand life doesn't pause for anyone, not even in the face of death. Damien, who had been smirking from the sidelines, stepped forward menacingly. Listen, little brother, he said, his tone cold and almost cruel. Life moves on, whether you like it or not. You better stay out of our way. We don't care about your feelings if they get in the way, understand? Landon recoiled at the harshness in Damien's voice, his heart pounding with the sting of the threat. Physically, he knew he was no match for Damien, and it was painfully clear that Sienna would offer no support. With a heavy heart, he turned away, a profound sense of isolation enveloping him. The loss of his parents was hard enough, but realizing he had also lost his siblings to their greed and dreams of wealth was devastating. This moment marked a pivotal turning point for Landon. He was confronting a harsh reality. In his most desperate hour, he was completely alone. The bleakness of the funeral had not fully hit him until the ceremony concluded and everyone else drifted away. At just 15, he remained behind, clutching the cold, hard stone of the grave, his body shaking. Tears streamed down his face, each one mingling with the soil covering his parents' final resting place. Why did you leave me all alone? He sobbed, his voice carrying through the cemetery, almost as if pleading for an answer from the indifferent gray sky. Meanwhile, Sienna and Damien had already set their sights on a different goal. Their brisk steps toward the lawyer's office were purposeful, each stride moving them closer to the inheritance that awaited. The office was stark contrast to the emotional turmoil Landon was experiencing. As the lawyer shuffled the documents, the air was thick with anticipation. As outlined, the lawyer began, his voice breaking through the tension. The siblings are free to divide the assets as they see fit. Sienna and Damien exchanged knowing looks, their eyes lit with greed and relief. Finally, Damien burst out, barely able to contain himself. We're going to keep it all. The money, the cars, the luxurious house in the city. Just think of all the parties, all the trips we can plan, Sienna chimed in, her thoughts already dancing with possibilities. Goodbye, farm life. However, the lawyer, his face marked by a hint of concern, interjected with a gentle reminder of their responsibility. But you must consider Landon too, he advised with firmness. Landon? It's a going-away party, Sienna said coolly, her tone dismissive as if she were explaining something entirely inconsequential. We're moving to the city. It's time to leave the past behind and start fresh. But Landon, whose heart was still tender with love and respect for their parents, couldn't accept her rationale. This is an insult to their memory. It's disrespectful, he shouted, his voice piercing the music and drawing the gaze of a few intrigued guests. Damien, clearly annoyed by Landon's disruption, advanced toward him, his jaw set firmly. Landon, if you can't be part of this celebration, then you don't need to be here causing a scene, he snapped, his grip tight as he seized Landon's arm with unexpected strength. They dragged him outside, the chill of the night air stinging his skin as they traversed the moonlit field. They arrived at the old cabin where the animals were sheltered. With a harsh push, they shoved Landon inside and slammed the door shut behind him. The pigs inside grunted and stirred, alarmed by the sudden disturbance. "You can't just lock me in here," Landon yelled, his fists banging against the wooden door as he heard the latch being secured from outside. From the other side, Damien flashed a malicious grin as he pulled out a key and flung it into the nearby well. The sound of the key splashing into the water resonated in the quiet night. "Oh, enjoy your new life, Landon," Damien taunted, his and Sienna's laughter diminishing into the distance as they walked away. Collapsing onto the dirt floor of the cabin, Landon felt the damp earth mix with the stench of the animals, his despair deepening in the pitch-dark solitude. As the faint sounds of the party's music wafted through the air, a resolve began to kindle within him. He wouldn't accept this fate. He would find a way out and confront the injustices his siblings had thrust upon him. The stark, dark cabin resonated with Landon's desperate cries. Overwhelmed by panic and the acute sense of isolation, he continued to pound his bruised fists against the solid wooden door. "Help! Is anyone out there? Please, help me!" His voice broke, saturated with fear and despair, his pleas disappearing into the vast night, answered only by the soft grunts of the pigs sharing his accidental prison. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Landon finally slumped to the dirt floor, his body quaking from both the cold and sheer fatigue. With the remnants of his strength, he scraped together a small hole and burrowed under a layer of dirt and straw, seeking a scant measure of warmth in his bleak surroundings. Sleep eventually claimed him, but it was restless and haunted by nightmares echoing his earlier cries for help. As dawn broke and the first light seeped through the small cabin window, the tranquility of the farm was disrupted by the rumble of a moving truck. Vanessa and Damien watched with barely concealed glee as their possessions were methodically loaded up. Eager to leave their rural past behind, they looked forward to a future filled with the allure and promises of city life. As they sped along the highway, the thought of their newfound urban freedom filling them with excitement, Vanessa's thoughts briefly returned to Landon. Her voice, cold and mocking, pierced the silence. "What do you think happened to Landon, huh? Think someone found him?" Damien's response came with a dismissive laugh. "You think? And what if he didn't make it? Even better for us. Fewer problems to deal with, right?" Vanessa nodded, her laughter merging with Damien's, veiling the darkness of their intentions. Back at the cabin, Landon awoke from his troubled sleep, fresh wave of determination bolstering his resolve. Despite his weakness, he resumed his pounding on the door, his voice raspy from his previous night's screams for help. "Please, is anyone out there? I need to get out." Unbeknownst to him, the farmhouse had long been deserted by his siblings. With each desperate strike against the door, the harsh reality of his abandonment sank in deeper. He was utterly alone, left to fend for himself in what felt more like a dungeon than a haven. The overwhelming silence that followed each of his cries intensified the sense of isolation, smothering him in despair. Yet amidst this profound solitude, a spark of resolve flickered to life within him. Landon resolved that his spirit would not be crushed by the weight of his siblings' betrayal. "I will escape," Landon murmured to himself, his voice barely audible amidst the straw and dirt. "I won't give up." Inside his heart, a relentless drive to survive and eventually confront his siblings grew stronger with each passing moment in the frigid, shadowy confines of the cabin. Landon's tale, woven with pain and betrayal, yet tinged with a budding hope for justice, was far from its conclusion. How would he find his way out? And once free, what actions would he take? The pervading darkness of the cabin amplified Landon's sense of isolation, a palpable companion as pervasive as the chill creeping through the wall cracks. His soft weeping resonated within the small space, a poignant echo of his dread and despair. Yet, amidst the gloom, the presence of the pigs, horses, and cows brought unexpected solace. Their eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, reassured him of his not being completely alone. "It's okay. Don't worry," he reassured them, inching towards the feed bag. His hands shook as he began distributing food among his accidental companions. He fed the pigs first, who acknowledged his efforts with soft grunts of thanks, then the horses, whose expressive eyes seemed to recognize the severity of their shared plight, and finally, the cows, whose tranquil gazes offered him a strange comfort. As hunger clawed at his insides, he made sure the animals were fed before he finally gave in to his own pangs. Reluctantly, Landon ate what was available, grains intended for the horses and leftover scraps meant for the pigs. Though far from satisfying, his desperate hunger left him little choice. He relied on the cow's milk for hydration, a vital but insufficient lifeline. As the days melded into a ceaseless struggle for survival, Landon found companionship in the animals, considering them his makeshift family. You know, he whispered softly while caressing the horses, I never thought I'd end up here, but I'm grateful for your company. He shared stories with the pig about better days on the farm, providing a momentary escape from his grim reality. However, the dwindling food supply loomed large, each ration he fed the animals marking a step toward an unknown future. I'm not sure what we'll do when the food runs out, he confided to a cow, its large, calm eyes seeming to grasp the gravity of his statement. Desperation deepened with each futile pound against the cabin door, hoping for a rescuer. His hands were raw and blistered from the effort, his voice hoarse from his continuous calls for help. Please, is anyone out there? I need help, Landon shouted, his voice echoing through the sparse cabin, though internally a deep-seated fear gripped him. No one was coming to his rescue. In these harrowing moments, the animals drew near, their body heat and quiet companionship a small comfort against the stark loneliness. To Landon, these creatures were no longer just his charge. They had become his sole link to a world that now seemed harsh and remote. They had become his makeshift family in a place where hope was merely a dim flicker. Encircled by his faithful animal friends and caught in an ongoing battle for survival, Landon held on to a sliver of hope that someday he would escape. His saga, characterized by solitude but also defined by an indomitable connection with his fellow captives, continued to evolve. Anyone familiar with his plight would ponder how this brave, resolute young man could possibly surmount such daunting obstacles to win back his freedom. As the early morning light crept in, casting a pale glow inside the cabin, despair reached its zenith. Landon, with his features hollowed out and marred by tears, confronted the grim truth. The food supplies had depleted. Surrounded by his animal companions, the only solace through his bleakest days, he made a gut-wrenching choice. His voice quivered as he began to unchain each animal. You don't deserve to be confined here with me. If this is our end, let us meet it freely. The animals looked on with an almost sacred stillness, their eyes reflecting a poignant understanding. He released them one by one, each parting filled with mutual gratitude and sorrow. You don't deserve this, he whispered tenderly to each. Though my life has been tough and full of hardships, you have brought me brief moments of joy. His words lingered in the air, mixing with the dust kicked up by the stirring animals. Suddenly, the routine gloom was disrupted by a pig, which began to furiously dig and bump against a previously unnoticed part of the wall. Curiosity mingled with a renewed sense of hope. Landon moved closer to see what had been discovered. What have you found, my friend? He asked, watching the pig's determined effort. Motivated by the pig's tenacity, a cow started to bellow loudly, amplifying their collective plea for freedom. Soon, the largest horse, a robust creature known for its strength, joined in, forcefully kicking at the door. With each determined kick, the old wood creaked and strained, echoing like a call to arms against the confining darkness. That's it! Keep going, Landon encouraged, adrenaline mixing with hope and fear in his veins. Finally, with a resounding crack, the door burst open, splinters flying as the horse's powerful kicks broke through the barrier. As the first rays of the sun pierced the cabin, they cast a hopeful glow on both Landon and the animals. Together, they stepped into the freedom of the early morning, the dawn light enveloping them warmly. Landon paused just outside, taking a deep breath of the fresh, open air, feeling the space around him expand. The animals frolicked joyously, relishing their newfound liberty, their calls of delight echoing in the crisp morning. The prospect of selling any of them seemed distant until a group of men approached, recognizing the potential value of such well-cared-for animals. They offered Landon a hefty sum, $10,000, to part with his pigs, a significant amount for someone who had been scraping by. Landon stood conflicted, his affection for the animals weighing heavily against the urgent needs of his farm. Is this really the best decision? He pondered aloud, more to himself than to the buyers. After a moment of heavy silence, he relented, his voice laced with resignation. It is, he murmured as he agreed to the deal. With a sorrowful glance at his beloved pig, tears formed in his eyes. I'm sorry, buddy, he whispered regretfully as he handed the rope to the men. The cash they handed him felt alien and cumbersome in his hands. Watching his pig being led away stirred a complex mix of loss and reluctant relief within him. This money, though painfully acquired, would indeed sustain the rest of his farm animals. The decision was harsh but necessary. illustrating life's cruel ironies, sometimes the toughest choices do yield significant reliefs. As evening fell and the sun's last light cast long shadows over the land, Landon felt an old soul in his young body, matured by the harsh realities of life choices not commonly faced by others his age. Meanwhile, in a grand mansion bustling with the area's elites, a gathering that would typically just be another entry in the social registry was turning into a culinary sensation. The mansion, splendid and buzzing with the chatter of distinguished guests, shifted into a reverent silence when the roasted pig, the subject of Landon's hard decision. As the sun rose, a line of high-end SUVs navigated the rural landscape, advancing towards the hidden orchard. Driven by the memory of the unforgettable taste they had experienced the previous evening, each man was eager to discover the source of the exceptional pork that had captivated them. The route was challenging, with winding roads slicing through dense forests, occasionally obscured by thick undergrowth. Nonetheless, these determined businessmen, motivated by potential profits and the tantalizing flavor of the meat, pressed on. After a prolonged search, they emerged into a clearing that seemed almost idyllic. There, they found a sprawling farm where animals, pigs, cows, and horses roamed freely in what appeared to be perfect harmony. In the midst of this pastoral scene was a young man, Landon, who mingled with the animals more as a peer than as their master. The convoy stopped, and the men stepped out, their expensive footwear sinking into the fertile soil. They approached cautiously, careful not to disturb the tranquil environment. Noticing the visitors, Landon walked towards them, his expression a blend of curiosity and wariness. "What brings you to my farm, and what did you find so remarkable about it?" one of the men inquired, his voice full of sincere admiration. Landon, with a modest grin, replied, "This land and these animals are my life. Most of these creatures found their way to me, and I've simply taken care of them. All that you see here has flourished under my care." The businessmen looked at each other, their minds buzzing with the potential they perceived. "You mentioned the pigs are exclusively fruit-fed, correct? That must be the secret to their unique taste," one man remarked, eager to understand more about the diet. "Yes, they only eat fruit from these woods," Landon confirmed, "which gives their meat a flavor unlike any other." Impressed and seeing a lucrative opportunity, each man agreed to purchase a pig for $10,000. The collective sum amounted to an astounding $150,000, transforming Landon's financial circumstances overnight. As he counted the cash, Landon felt as though he were in a surreal dream. He had never envisioned such a turn of events in his life. The men, now the satisfied new owners of the pigs, loaded their valuable acquisitions into their vehicles, each one pleased with the thought of taking home not just a pig, but a gateway to a remarkable new venture. As they departed, the businessmen carried away more than just the pigs. They had discovered a pork of such exceptional quality that it promised to revolutionize their enterprises. "We'll be back," they assured as they left, their engines fading into the distance, leaving Landon alone in the peacefulness of his farm, his mind buzzing with the day's events. Within just a few hours, his humble farm had become the potential nucleus of a burgeoning business empire. This day represented a significant turning point for Landon. Soon, the local community would buzz with talk of the young man from the orchard and his extraordinary livestock. It marked the dawn of something grand, something far beyond even Landon's most ambitious daydreams. Following their revelatory visit, a handful of millionaires convened in an opulently appointed clubroom, eager to discuss the opportunities Landon's animals might offer. Their conversation was filled with expressions of wonder, and a few even voiced jealousy over the young farmer's serendipitous success. Yet, many were already scheming on how to tap into this newfound treasure. "Imagine the potential of those horses on the racetracks," one suggested, his wineglass twirling in hand, his expression one of eager anticipation. "Those cows could transform our meat production processes," chimed in another, his eyes alight with visions of profit. It was Peter McKay, one of the first to buy a pig, who made a decisive move. Known for his empathetic nature and sense of duty, Peter extended an invitation to Landon for a dinner at his mansion, keen to understand more about the industrious young farmer. That evening, Peter's home was a beacon of luxury. Peter's youngest daughter, who sat beside him during dinner, listened intently to Landon's story, each word resonating deeply with her. By the time they finished their meal, she felt compelled to speak. "Your life story is truly astonishing, Landon. I'd love to visit your farm," she remarked, clearly moved by his resilience. Grateful for her genuine interest, Landon invited her to come over the next day. As they wandered around his modest cabin and the fields that stretched beyond, she observed everything with a blend of respect and concern. "You shouldn't have to endure such conditions," she commented earnestly. Landon, with a hint of sadness in his smile, replied, "Your father said something similar last night. He believes my land and animals could be worth a fortune." Encouraged by Peter's counsel and now with financial support, Landon began to sell some of his livestock at unprecedented prices. A horse sold for $200,000, a pig for $30,000, and he even invested in high-quality fencing to better secure and enhance his property. "I'm transforming this place," Landon proudly told Peter's daughter as they watched the sunset paint his thriving farm in golden hues. She smiled back, her admiration for both the transformed landscape and Landon himself evident. Every nook of the venue was bedecked with wildflowers, and the ambient sounds of nature created a picturesque setting for their celebration. Guests from across the nation were in awe of both the stunning estate and the touching romance between Landon and Isabella. However, the presence of Landon's brothers at the event caused a stir among the attendees, casting a shadow over the festivities. Their appearance was both surprising and undesired by Landon, who had not expected those who had once betrayed him to turn up on such a significant occasion. "We thought you were gone for good," his brothers blurted out, their eyes roaming greedily over the expansive estate. "Is all this really yours?" they asked, their voices tinged with skepticism and jealousy. Standing firmly next to Isabella, Landon maintained his composure. "Yes, it's all mine. Built on the foundation of hard work and true love, concepts foreign to you," he replied, his tone even but his eyes reflecting the sting of past betrayals. When his brothers audaciously demanded a share of his success, asserting some misplaced entitlement to his fortune, Landon's response was swift. He signaled to his security, decisively instructing them, "These men are the ones who left me to fend for myself. They nearly destroyed me. Remove them from my property immediately and ensure they do not come back." The guards promptly escorted the brothers out, their actions met with nods of approval from the guests, further solidifying their admiration for Landon. With the disturbance quelled, the atmosphere lightened, and the music swelled once more, encouraging the guests to join in the celebration. Landon and Isabella, encircled by their friends and family, danced beneath the stars, enveloped in love and the enchanting beauty of their surroundings. From a young man who had once had nothing, Landon had risen to be a respected figure, cherished not only for his wealth but for his steadfast moral character. His life story, a tapestry of hardship and victory, served as a profound reminder that perseverance and love can forge a legacy of joy and success. As we draw close to the end, let's reflect on the essence of this tale. While Landon's story is a work of fiction, it mirrors the real struggles of many young individuals today who confront severe adversity, often feeling abandoned or overlooked by those meant to protect and nurture them. This narrative underscores the critical role that family relationships, or the absence of them, play in shaping an individual's destiny. It highlights the essential need for parents and guardians to provide unwavering love, attention, and support, particularly during challenging times. The impact of emotional neglect is profound, affecting the most vulnerable members of our society, our children, in ways that can have lasting consequences. I encourage you to pause and consider. How attuned are you to the emotional needs of those you care about? What steps can you take to ensure that no one, especially children, feels neglected or overlooked? Share your insights and suggestions in the comments. How do you believe we, as a community, can improve our support for each other? I'd love to hear your experiences. Let's open up this discussion. Stories like these not only provide lessons, but also offer us an opportunity to avert real-life misfortunes. Remember to like, subscribe, and keep this dialogue alive. Join me again for more discussions that matter.